to kick off our topic, I mean, we really have to get down to the fundamentals here. I mean, why does this really matter in the fast-paced world of business? And I'd just like to perhaps introduce a bit of a provocative quote here. And I go back to Oscar Wilde, who said, "All art is completely useless." Your response from the business perspective?
Actually, might be that art is useless, but there is a philosopher who's called Ordine, and he has a very good book which he gives a name, it's called The Usefulness of the Useless. And this is quite important because in art there is a lot of usefulness which we have to get developed and which you have to invent and such kind of things. And when we are talking here, especially at a location like the Hub conference, we are talking about disruption and new technologies and new business models and stuff. And everybody's thinking about how to develop such kind of things. And you know, innovation and ideas are not falling from heaven. So this has to get developed somehow. With new ideas has to get developed somehow. And art helps to open mind, to find new ideas and to think in a completely different direction. I'll give you an example. A good friend of mine and artist we collect is Tobias Rehberger from Frankfurt, a very contemporary artist. And once we had a conversation, he said, you know, this is a hammer. And what you can do with this hammer? I said, okay, you can put a nail in and stuff like that. And he said, no, you can also eat a hammer. I said, why? To eat a hammer? I said, yeah, you know, you have to burn it and you have to destroy it completely, and then you mill it and stuff like this, and then it's just powder, and the powder you can bake a cookie. And so it's a completely different view how a lot of artists are thinking. And this different view helps, from my point of view, companies quite a lot to change their mind and to get a different view how to develop things.
Jasmin, do you agree? What's your view?
Totally, and coming back to Oscar Wilde's quotation that all art is useless, I would say art is not useless, but it needs the freedom to be useless, because it is more about the process and the way how to get to the final idea than it is about the final concept. So it needs the freedom to fail. And as Andreas Bauer also said before, companies don't really like the word error, but there's actually a lot to learn in this process of failing, of trying, of being irritated, of deviating, and this is where actually creativity starts and where we can also see a creative mind working.
Oliver?
Yeah, pretty much agree with what Jasmin said. As you said, art is about failing, and this has very much in common with developing new business models, new technology for tackling new business problems. And so I think there's a very strong analogy between both.
So then, Ulrich, let's really get down into the details. When we're talking about GFJ Technologies, your firm, when did this commitment to art start and why?
Actually, we are collecting art since more than 20 years now. And initially we started because I found the parties of the galleries and the artists were much more fun than the IT industry. So it's much more action and stuff like this. And so we continued talking to artists, talking to gallerists, and we started to buy one or the other piece. And collecting art is really, I would say, a phenomenon. Because when you started once and work with artists, then you get more and more and more, and you get even deeper into the art scene, and you start to see things and to start to see art. And this is a continuous process. And therefore, we started also to put the pieces we bought into our offices. So we have 42 offices right now all over the world, and we have a little collection, I would rather say. And we hang also the different pieces into the office, or put some offices we develop together with artists, for example. So in Stuttgart we have an office which also Tobias Rehberger developed. We gave him the idea, hey, you can do what you want, 50 people have to work in this space, and we have to be very flexible and just create something without any limits. And so he created a beautiful office which is now one piece. and people are coming and see it as a kind of a reference how future offices could be, because we have walls out of just of paper and stuff like this, which you can throw down and change it and all these different kind of things. So this is a development, and the company is connected with art over years. You have to develop it piece by piece.
And Oliver, I found it quite interesting. Your company, you actually do something that I haven't heard of before. You have your entire corporate identity redesigned by artists periodically. What is that about, and how exactly does that work?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is when our agency came up with the idea. At first, we found it really interesting. Then at another point, we thought, no, let's not do that. Yeah. And then we thought about it again, and we thought, yeah, let's give it a try. I mean, it feels strange because forming your new corporate identity is more than just a try, right? Because it needs to be correct at the beginning. But I think we were quite naive at that moment. We just started, and we didn't really realize what it all entailed. So,
what motivated the experiment? I mean, how did you get that idea? What motivated that?
Well, the idea was that, first of all, it was about media, new media arts. Well, not about art as in general, but new media arts, because the idea was that there would be a very strong connection between new media arts, because basically means using technology to create art that wouldn't be possible without technology. Would be strong analogy to doing software development as a means of making new business models possible that weren't possible without technology. But that was basically the connection between new media arts and our business. Yeah, so we thought, let's give it a try. And
it's been a success?
Yeah, I think we were quite successful with our first shot. And we're now, I think you're going to talk about this later, in the middle of finding the new artists for our new edition.
Okay. And Jasmin, I mean, from your perspective as a curator, it must be really encouraging to hear these perspectives that are on both sides of you. I'd like to give you the opportunity to react and say, okay, is this the right sort of mindset, the right sort of mentality? Do you see the opportunity to push it even further?
Yeah, I think it's totally great that companies are opening up for this process and wanting to engage with the art and the artists. I think we should equally ask the question, why should artists work with companies? Because there's also the need for budgets and infrastructures, yes, but also when companies collaborate with artists, there should be the seek for mutuality, and also to try to find a mutual understanding, because I was following up the START's residency program with an artist, Sokano. He's also in the exhibition, and a European consortium. And what was really interesting to see there is that these are really two worlds. They are driven by different values. They have different languages even. So they use a different terminology, where a company speaks of a showroom or demonstration of a technology to target their audience or to lower the threshold of technology. Artist has a completely different idea. They seek to create a new project, to develop a new idea, to realize a concept, and also to mediate this concept to an audience in the framework of an exhibition. So there are totally different words, and by this also different expectations. So I think what is really important in this process is transparency, and also the process of mutuality.
And I'd like to ask you, just generally speaking, when we look at the art world and the state of it right now, because I mean, we're here in Berlin, right? And when you're walking along the streets, you see it more. You see more galleries, you see more art just around us. I mean, Berlin has always been a pretty artsy city, but I would say even more so than in recent years. You've really seen it develop. Jasmin, this topic of an art boom in the economy, are you seeing that come up?
Yeah, I see that, and I was also wondering, why is it happening? I think if we consider the times that we're in, I mean, we have fake news, we have AI simulators that can basically generate every image, and maybe we seek more for authenticity, and what the artist kind of constitutes is an authentic personality and authentic ideas. So I think there lies something in there why the economy and especially brands are looking forward to collaborate with artists, and by this also to kind of have this kind of edgy image. But on the other hand, I think what is also really important is not only the whole aspect of advertising or advertising, but also the collaboration on a research and development level, because artists are by nature always like pushing the boundaries, seeking for new tools, hacking, developing, and by this also creating a lot of new tools, usages, and also kind of innovations that the industry finds really relevant and interesting.
Ulrich, what do you think?
Actually, I think it's for sure Berlin is an art city somehow. But art, you can, to deal with art and to work with art, you can do all over the places, even if you are living in the countryside. And I know a lot of collectors, really famous collectors, who live totally remote on the countryside, and they have very good international relationships. And for example, when you go, and I can recommend, you have to go to a Haus on Wirth, which is a famous gallery from Zurich, and they have Haus on Wirth Somerset in Bruton. It is in southern of England, and it's a huge barn, and they have a world famous collection over there. So you can do art everywhere, and you can talk and work with artists all over the place. At the end of the day, dealing with art and dealing with artists is a business as every other business as well. So it's more let's say it's two sides of the medal. On the one side, it's a business as every business as well. But on the other side, it's also fascinating to collect art which you like. So I think always it's not to deal with the art world as regarding money and develop artists or develop the pieces you have. It's also regarding how you like specific artists, how you like specific art. And if you can combine this with the ideas of a company and with the ideas what you are doing, then it's a fantastic hobby somehow.
So, I mean, your company, though, GFT Technologies, where did this commitment to art start, would you say?
It got developed. It started just in the beginning, as I mentioned before. We bought a few pieces, and we used the pieces for decoration of our offices. But then we get more and more, and we found out that it makes even more fun and more sense to develop pieces together with the artists, which we are doing in the last years quite intensively. So very big installations. For example, we had years ago, the first big installation was at the Seabit show, where we developed a complete hall with 5,000 square meters with Tobias Rehberger and Jürgen Meyer-Haar, who are a very good architect and a good artist. And we developed a 5,000 square meter Seabit hall. So this was completely different. And to develop a new kind of ideas with artists, this is very interesting, because the results are quite much different than the normal stuff you are doing. But you have to be very open, and I know a few entrepreneurs who also are working together with artists, and they give very straightforward directions to the artist and say, I want to have this and you can deliver me.
Yeah.
And this is not the way how you to do it. We are always very open, say, look, this is the idea, what do you think? And you can do what you want. And this what you can do, what you want is very important, so because then you get really interesting results. And for sure, in the company, the people are discussing this quite controversially, because the art we are collecting is not so kind of streamlined, especially conceptual art. So people are discussing what kind of shit do we hanging here in different sculptures nobody understands or so. But this is also a process that people are talking about it, and when I, for example, when I go into such a discussion, I say, look, this piece is valued about, let's say, 200,000 euros or so, and they say, oh, this is just nothing. I say, yeah, we have to discuss it from different angles, and this is what makes it interesting, to talk to the people, to talk to the clients, to talk to employees, and so we live very intensively with art.
Fascinating stuff. And Oliver, you've had some cooperations, right, with artists that I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about. I understand that you cooperated with a museum and a Colombian artist. How did that work?
Well, it was definitely an interesting experience, because we never did that before, obviously. So to start working with an artist on a work of its own, I mean, it's not something that we contracted. It's a work that he wanted to do, and he just was looking for sponsoring. So we sponsored this work. We had an engineer work alongside him to make this come to reality. And this was really interesting experience for all of us, because working with artists is, I don't know, it's really hard to predict what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I mean, could you predict it? Because, I mean, he had a concept, right? And
He had a concept.
maybe you can tell us what that was. And then, did you have the ability to influence it? Did you?
We didn't try to influence it. I mean, we influenced it maybe in a way because we obviously had a budget, so we couldn't spend enormous amounts of money on that. So we had to somehow focus on what to do. But as it was already coupled with this exhibition, because we created this artwork for an exhibition at ZKM, we had a deadline. We had a deadline that we needed to meet. So we had to influence it in a way, because obviously he has much more ideas that just couldn't be done in that time. But from the artistic point of view, from the concept point of view, we didn't interfere with it at all.
And Jasmin, I understand that you will actually accompany innoQ, right, at the next collaboration. Tell us more about that.
Yes, so me and my colleague Julian Adenauer from Retune, we are mediating the process for the next collaboration between innoQ and Waltz Binaire, which is a creative studio based in Berlin. And the process was that in the beginning we were sitting down together and thinking like, okay, you want a new CI developed by an artist, so we brought like 10 to 15 artists as ideas, and then we went into a collaborative process and we selected 5 artists. They all made a proposal, and then from this we selected 1 artist. And now we're actually at that moment of developing a new project, commissioning a new project, which is going to be pretty amazing. We're just having a call on Friday, because Waltz Binaire, Mio, he came up with this idea of creating the most poetic dance, how he calls it. It's a neural evolution, and he wants to train an algorithm how to walk. So he actually wants to recreate evolution with an algorithm, and we're going to collaborate with innoQ and one of their coders. So one of their coders is currently trying to figure out this neural evolution algorithm, and then once we are at this point that we can say it's feasible, we will go into the process of developing the artwork, and in the end it's going to be like a lot of bipedal models by this like humans standing and sitting in the beginning, and then you can see them or watch them how they start learning how to walk, how we did this in evolution. So kind of evolution compressed into 1 or 2 hours, and it's going to be a performance in the end, which I think will be pretty phenomenal.
And did he get a little bit of an edge? Because that sounds pretty tech focused. Oliver?
Yeah, so we're really excited about this, and I really hope it's going to come out all well. So we have to see, and within the next couple of days we'll know whether this will be feasible or not, but I'm pretty confident that we're going to do that.
Okay,
yeah, it's pretty cutting edge.
That's neat. That's neat. I mean, it sounds as if, this is a pretty smooth process that you've worked out here, that the understandings are there, that everyone really sees the value. But Ulrich, I'd like to come back to you and ask you if you've gotten any like headwinds, any pushbacks from companies, perhaps shareholders or perhaps even employees that have said, hey, you know what, I'd rather have a bonus than this ship that's on the wall. Surely, you must have heard that before.
Actually, no. We never have.
Really?
No. We never have talked about money regarding art we are doing. So this was never a discussion. And by the way, we never had a budget. It was always a kind of a virtual thing, the art collection. So we never created a budget. We never talked about the cost of the art collection. It was almost there. And this is also a story of the development in the company. And what I am focusing, you can't plan everything. You can't budget everything. Some stuff has to get developed, and it has to happen all of a sudden in the company. And this makes a lot of fun, because people realized after a few years that there is some art. Nobody was talking about the prices. We have pieces which are quite valuable, I would rather say, and they are hanging in a floor in the office of the people. Everybody can ask and can look into the catalogs we have and say, can I get this piece in my office, for example, in Germany, for example. And people get the very expensive pieces sometimes. So, but the price discussion or regarding trading threshold, regarding bonuses and stuff never has happened. So it's something which is kind of mystic.
Oliver, has it been that easy for you too? I mean, Ulrich makes it seem as if it's just, everyone sees the value in this.
Yeah.
And there is no controversy.
Yeah, I think I have to concur with him because we had some discussion in the company, obviously, because first of all, art is always a matter of taste, so sometimes people just don't like what's being done. But I mean, as we do new editions every like 2 years or 3 years, we haven't yet decided on that, we can almost promise everyone that something is going to be in one of the editions that they're going to like. So if you don't like this year's edition, you probably like next year's edition. So this is not a problem. And as to budget, well, it definitely costs more than just having a fixed corporate identity and living with that for like 10 years. But I think the cost is really, it's okay. We can handle that. It's perfectly fine. And I think it doesn't mean that anyone gets less bonus or anything else. So that's perfectly
what would you
fine.
say are the big learnings that can be shared with other companies that you've perhaps learned through the collaboration?
Experiences to share. Sorry, I didn't get it. Okay. Well, that's an interesting question. First of all, I don't think you should really approach it like a standard IT project. It works differently because artists work differently. Artists have wild ideas and go into this and that direction, and it's really hard to make sure they keep track of what you plan to do. So this is something that I would definitely give it as an advice. I probably would also say don't underestimate it, because it's a lot of effort, and it's always more effort than you expected. I mean, I think we said we would like invest 10 days of development into this project, and we ended up with 3 months, right? So it's much more than you originally think it is. And I would also advise people to really make clear from the beginning how much you're going to invest and what the result is going to be. I think this is also important because I think we a little bit failed to do that in the first try. So we ended up with this extension like 3 months, but I think if you try to make sure in the beginning what's going to come out after a specific amount of time, a specific amount of money, that's probably better.
Okay. And Jasmin, what would you say? I mean, you've heard these two, what they're saying. I mean, how are you gauging the environment also?
I think, yeah, Oliver pointed out some really good aspects, like make the expectations clear and set kind of the outcome clear. So within this kind of fixed frame, you can be free. So you can iterate in between and also, yeah, be open to go into this process, because things will stop at a certain point and redevelop in another way. And it's about that. Yeah, what I think on the other side is really important is what I said in the beginning is the mutuality and the communication. So it is exactly how this intersection is designed, like how is this collaboration set up, and what is the framework. And I think there are a lot of really good ways and possibilities to bring the two worlds together, but I think it's really about how it's designed.
Okay. So Ulrich, if you had to give a pitch, we know that you're involved with art not only as an entrepreneur, but also really as a private investor. I mean, this is really a passion for you. When we're talking about the benefits of art, why people should care, I mean, the title of our panel here is The Benefits of Art for Companies. What do you say to that?
Actually, two things. On the one side, art can be a very interesting investment for companies, beside every business what you're doing in addition. On the other side, art opens mind and art opens new thinking, and this is the most important benefit for a company. But anybody has to have the passion for the art. So if you have, which means art is a special, ideal tool for family-owned companies. It's not a tool for companies who think, okay, let's deal a little bit with art or with some artists, and because this is la mode, this is fashion right now. That's what's happening in Berlin quite often. So art, we are doing some art, and because we are cool, stop. So art is a passion, and you have to have anybody who is passionate about this thing. Then it works because it's authentical. All other stuff, you shouldn't do it, buy some pictures to the wall and that's it. So if you don't have it, it's a very cost-intensive hobby.
Jasmin, what's your pitch? Why should we care?
Why should we care?
Yeah.
About art?
Yeah.
because it gives us a space to rethink, to feel, to be in touch with ourselves and with the work. I think it's a value that is more and more important in our environment, and I think what is also really important, what the value of art is and what the artist contributes, is that they create a space for experiences, because most of the business-driven world is driven by PowerPoints, by words, contracts, or source codes, and what the art actually does is to create a space where you can actually experience and immerse yourself into it and have a feedback. And you said it's about if employees like it or not. I think this positioning of liking something or disliking, or that something provokes you, is just happening because it is there in a space to experience. So it allows you to position yourself towards it, and I think that's a really important value. And we as curators, we are trying to create these spaces for these experiences.
Okay, so we have time for just one more round of questions, and Oliver, we will begin with you. But first, I just want to pose it because, you know, perhaps we can leave everyone with a bit of an action-oriented proposal here. You know, if you're a company, you're looking at this, you're thinking about it, where do you start?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, we started with what the agency gave us as an advice, and that was to, at this point, turn to ZKM and see what they have, because they were planning an exhibition and they had some works that still needed sponsoring. So that was an easy way for us to get into that. Otherwise, I would probably advise everyone who's interested in trying to do something like we did to approach someone who knows what to do and who knows the people, someone like Jasmin, for example, because otherwise I think you're going to get lost really soon if you don't know your way around the space of artists and artist collaborations. I think you really need someone who knows how this works.
Okay, some helpful advice. Jasmin, what do you say?
I have really short action at hand. We have the Digital Arts Lab over there, where you can just like come over and experience the artworks and also speak to us, Julian and I, who curated the exhibition, and we are happy to seek out for new opportunities and to be there and talk to us.
Fantastic. Ulrich, you have the last word here.
Well, actually, I would say start today and go to the show, and then continue this week to the Art Cologne, Art Basel, and other different shows, so that you get a feeling on art and evaluation and stuff like this, and use 12 months of just getting a feeling what makes passion to yourself and what gives you a thrill, and then start eventually with small pieces and buy one or the other piece, and you'll see in 5 years if it gives you something or not. If it doesn't give you anything, then it's also not a...
So ultimately, begin with a little bit of soul searching.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much to our panel. Let's give them a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.